Virginia. I left my parents in Virginia when I went to college at Brown University in Rhode Island. But after my freshman year, my parents moved to Newport, Rhode Island. I couldn't get rid of them because my father got a job at the Naval War College. I spent one summer working in Newport as a waitress. After college, I moved to New York City. My husband, Jeff Laytin, and I have owned a home in East Hampton since 1994, and my daughter and I have lived here full-time since 2005, with my husband coming out on weekends. I write freelance articles for the Brown Alumni Monthly and for the East Hampton Press newspaper's residence section. I also have two grown stepchildren, a son who is 24, and a dog and cat. This book, Come Here, Go Away, is one I've been working on for many years. Some snippets done in stream of consciousness were written in a class at Brown. They include scenes with a piano player who worked at the Clark Cookhouse, which still exists in Newport today. The piano player was a strange guy who I dated briefly, and he made a lasting impression on me because he was so eccentric. He was 30 when I met him. In this book, the character based on him is 21, and the girl who narrates the book is 14. She turns 15 during the book. I started the book in earnest when my first son was born, and I was taking a course at NYU called Writing for Screen and TV. I met fellow writers in that group, and we got together to share our writing and help each other edit. I decided to work on the book again about 5 years ago, and two friends and I started another writing group. I also submitted the book to an editor and several agents and changed many things about the book, according to constructive criticism I received from them. My editor suggested I write a part 2 to the book. Part 1 is written from the point of view of the young girl, young teen. Part 2 was written from the point of view of her mother, but it was eventually discarded when the agent decided the voice was not as compelling as the one of the girl. The title of the book, Come Here, Go Away, is from a game played with a child on a swing that my mother and aunt played with me. When pushing the swing away, you say, go away, with a frown. And when the child comes back on the swing, you say, come here. You go away. And you go, come here. And make all sorts of funny facial expressions. The theme of the book is about the separation of a mother and daughter, and how much harder it is if the mother chooses to leave her family, as the traditional progression is for the child to decide to leave. The cover of the book was designed by my friend and business partner, Robbie Muir. She found these stock photo pictures of the Newport Bridge, a lobster, and a piano keyboard that is particularly distressed. The characters in the book are composites of many different people or are entirely fictional. Marley Burke, the protagonist, is 14 when her father decides to take her from Virginia to Newport. Her mother has disappeared, perhaps run off with another man. The father is modeled on my father and his father, my grandfather Robertson. My grandfather was a handsome, popular man who was always there to help out a neighbor who needed help. But when his wife threatened to divorce him, he picked up a gun, shot his wife, and killed himself. My grandmother lived a few years, then died of complications. This is when my father was 12. My character, Marley, has a father named Rob, who is a man who will help others in crisis, but he is weighed down by the fear that he could, if provoked, turn violent himself someday, based on a tragedy similar to my father's. Marley's mother is modeled after my cousin Alan's mother. Her name was Tiss, she's still alive, who did leave 2 children behind to travel to Paris by herself, supposedly to kill herself. Her story is when she got to Paris, she met a man, fell in love, this is Tiss, and eventually married him. When I was a child, I heard this story, and I was shocked that a mother would leave her children. So the story stayed with me. Marley, the girl, is modeled on a little girl I saw sitting on a fence in Crozet, Virginia, outside of Charlottesville. When I went there to ride horses with my friends, I saw her, realized she might be desperately poor, that her family might have lost everything, and that her future could be full of sadness and loss. Marley's voice is based on how I imagine this girl, and also my own voice, drawn on some of the loneliness I felt as a teenager. Marley has 3 close friends in the book, and all are misfits. In her Virginia home, she is friends with a Down syndrome boy named Bucky. As soon as she gets to Newport, she makes friends with 2 outlandish characters, the piano player named Len, and an old crusty lobster fisherman named Billy Budd. In this scene I'll read first, Marley meets Len for the first time. My first day in Rhode Island, Dad made his way out the front door without so much as a hello, how are you? Your Uncle Ted and I are going down to look at his hardware store, he said. You be nice to Aunt Nancy, okay? She's a saint to let us stay. I had always called Nancy and Ted Aunt and Uncle, but Mom told me that they weren't related to us by blood. Ted was Dad's best friend, so Aunt and Uncle were nicknames. I wasn't happy getting instructions on how to treat Aunt Nancy from my dad. I managed to grab a dinner roll and a glass of milk without seeing her and hightail it out of there. The streets of the town were deserted, and I wandered by the piers, watching the seagulls dive into the water. One gull flew near me, stretching out his wings, gliding past, enormous in front of me, the wingspan 4 feet. He was so different from those tiny V's in the storybooks. This creature was a huge bird with a hard beak and a body sculpted to help him catch the wind. Not innocent at all, maybe even a threat. As I watched, the gull plucked a clam from the sand, soared above the dock, and then dropped it from up high. The shellfish cracked open as it hit the ground, and gull dropped from the sky like a stone, lighting on the split shell, tearing the flesh apart. A few gulls landed nearby to see if he would leave some behind or be too stupid to defend his catch. I left the harbor to explore the back alleyways, some blocked by stacks of crates, some leading to small restaurants. In the distance, I thought I heard an old-timey song. It was coming from a piano, a slow, mournful tune that drew me in and matched my mood. I could tell the playing was coming from inside a 3-story building covered in shingles. The back door was open and I crept inside, peering around the corner where a piano stood against the wall. Facing me was a guy who looked just like Bucky, my best friend from Virginia, if Bucky was 21 instead of 12. It was scary how the color of his skin, his hair, so much of how he looked was the same. I'm practicing, so if you're going to poke around in here, keep it quiet, he said, his voice low. He had high cheekbones and green eyes that seemed to wink at me in the semi-darkness. A light blue work shirt and jeans hung on his body like clothes that belonged to someone else. Around his neck was a leather cord with a white disc at the end that was partly hidden underneath the shirt. There's a bathroom behind you, he said. Do something useful. Get me a glass of water. I stepped into the room, wanting to be safe, dry, and out of the wind. The ceiling was too low, and the room was crowded with shelves and stacks of wearing blenders, oversized mixing bowls, and steel baking trays. I did what he asked, tiptoeing towards him, afraid that if I blinked he would vanish, maybe because of how thin he was. He pointed at the sheets of music. I'm practicing. The words on the page seemed to jump out at me. Where somebody waits for me, sugar sweet and so is she. Bye, bye, blackbird. He pointed to a chair in the corner. You can sit over there if you want and tell me if the low notes are too loud. I noticed that his fingers were long and his nails were clipped short. His hands were covered with paint and plaster. He seemed to be humming under his breath, and the music filled up the room without one mistake. The way he moved his shoulders were almost a rocking motion, as if the notes went through his body. I dared to get closer and stood behind him. He smelled like cinnamon and smoke. I did my best to follow the tune he played and whispered the words to myself. No one here can love and understand me. Oh, what hard luck stories they all hand me. He mouthed the words and tried to sing a few bars, then signaled with a nod of his head for me to join him. And when I shook my head, he started laughing. I have a really bad voice, he said. Yours must be better. Your voice is fine, I lied. The way he played showed he had been practicing for a long time. I was stunned at how good he was. When he smiled, it was like we shared a secret that no one could know but us. It made sense. I had discovered this place, this guy, and we were hidden from the rest of the world. When he stood up, his shoulder grazed mine. Oh, sorry, he said. That's all right, I can tell you're harmless, I said. So you're going to show me up the upstairs, right? Well, okay. Name's Len Wyman. He pushed his shoulders back and sucked his waist in. I crossed my arms defensively. Marley, I just moved here from Virginia. I could tell you're from somewhere south, he said, your accent. Up the rickety stairs we went to the first floor of the restaurant. There was graffiti carved into the old wooden round tabletops. In the corner, stacked neatly, were crisp white napkins, sparkling forks and knives, and tall wine glasses. Across the room were double doors, and someone was banging around in the kitchen. If Dan comes in, we're going to have to beat it down the stairs, he said. When do you play next? Tonight, he said. I play from 10 till 2. I'll try to make it. You're my first friend in this town. Oh, that's a shame. There was a tiny brown mole near his mouth that was like a punctuation mark to his smile. You have to start somewhere, I said, dipping my head to one side and turning to leave, knowing I shouldn't hang around too long. I didn't want him to think I had nothing to do. As I walked toward town, I thought about the Blackbird song. It could have been written by me. I am the one saying goodbye. The one waiting is my mother. The next scene I'm going to read is Marley learning to lobster fish as a crew member on Billy Budd's boat. She meets him at a hardware store that her dad's running with her uncle, and he offers her a job as one of the crew members, and he's like a real old timer, a real old guy. He has a good reputation. Everybody trusts him, so her father allows her to go be a crew with him. And the background for this is that my father, when he moved to Newport, actually did go out on a boat like this and learn to lobster fish. I have no idea how to lobster fish, but I did do some research about it. From the looks of it, it's a miracle Mr. Budd's lobster boat stays afloat. He had promised me $4 an hour, and I decided he was getting a deal. It was the foggiest day of the year, and there weren't any other boats going out but us. This isn't a cruise, you know, he said to me before I could open my mouth. You want to fish for lobster? It's hard work. Show me what to do and I'll do it, I said. The motor took a while to turn over. Come on, Nellie, that's a good girl, he kept saying. Do it one more time, just one more time for Billy. When the engine sputtered to a start, Mr. Budd's whole body came alive. He gave me the thumbs up and smiled. Nellie? I asked him. Name of a woman I knew. Nearly drove me crazy. Now I'm the crazy driver, haha. He turned up the power and motored away from the dock. Hey, what are you looking at? Put these on. He gave me a pair of rubber gloves. Okay, now, this is the bow, that's the stern. Since you were the one helping me, you are the stern man. That's all you need to know for now. Get up there and steer. I gotta get this water out, he said. He started working with the hand pump, his head down, not worried about where I was steering. We got any shallow parts up ahead, I asked him. Huh? Nah, you're doing fine. Keep driving. I kept both hands on the wheel, dodging moorings and boats of all shapes and sizes. The air hit my face, and I blew my hair back. way the light went down into the water, the wind skated towards land, and the motion of the boat on the water was full of risk, unpredictable. We were clear away from it all. When we got out beyond the point, the wind off the ocean was blowing up, and the boat was taking the waves on one side, throwing me off balance. "You can turn her towards the beach," Mr. Budd said. That helped. Now the waves were coming stern to bow, pushing us fast toward shore. "Those yours?" I pointed at the white buoys with little sticks coming out of them. They were bright white, like those pieces of salt that Uncle George left in the pasture. The big field where he let the cows graze went all the way down to the river. At Uncle George's, I learned how to round up cows. They were sitting down. That meant it was going to rain, and I had to run at them to get them on their feet. When I got near, they'd glare at me with those big brown eyes, and their floppy lips would curl